goodness. Apologies for backing you, but I'll be with you soon. So I think this is the first time that you'll ever see me read from my phone. But that's testament to the fact that we're working so hard to make sure that this event and this day is as special as it could be. So forgive me. Okay, here it goes. And I said this is the first and the last time, right? So I have to stick to this. I should not have said that. I should not have said that. I have a thank you speech this evening, so of course I will have to read that because I cannot miss anyone. Okay, so good morning, buenos dias, bonjour, bon dia, and I will learn other languages soon, I'm sure. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Stacey Hope. I am the Managing Director for Women in Mining UK as of earlier this year. But I have been with Women in Mining UK for roughly 10, 11 years. And I think that I am the oldest, well, the longest serving Women in Mining UK volunteer, right? So for me, this organization means more than just being a volunteer, but it represents something more than that. It represents seeing people like me, people like you, Philippa, hello, people like Carolina here, being showcased as a person in mining and not just a woman in mining. And I say just a woman, but that's more powerful than being a man in mining. I really should look at my script, right? Okay. So, of course, it is an honor to see every single one of you. You'll see the global outreach volunteers who many of you would have had as your contact person. They know your face, they know your family, they know your address. I'm just kidding, GDPR issues. But we have mulled over hundreds and hundreds of names for so many hours, countless hours actually, to come up with this cohort. Well, these two cohorts. So it is an honor to have you here in this iconic building, but I think what's more iconic is the fact that this building is graced by all of you. So after 9 months of working nonstop on the WIM100 and having not celebrated 2020, we actually didn't think this day would arrive anytime soon. We were actually thinking, oh, another pandemic will strike. Well, let me knock on wood that it doesn't whilst we're here. But of course, needless to say, we're so happy that today has arrived. And I think maybe it's because we have these trailblazers, lots of troublemakers, disruptors, change makers here in London today, that we've also disrupted the London transport system. So that is testament, I'm convinced, to the fact that we are earth shakers. Some of us literally, but all of us metaphorically. So I know I've given hugs to many of you. For a lot of you, I have not yet. So your turn will come, fortunately or unfortunately for some of you. I apologize. I will go for the hug first. But I think we are all excited just to be here, just to see and meet these other faces, these other people, these other change makers in the sector. And I mean, what better way than to embrace, right? So embracing is what I will do physically, so forgive me, and I warn you in advance. But the WIM100 is not just about the embrace, it is a labor of love. And we are a volunteer-run organization. We all have day jobs at Women in Mining UK, and a lot of us have board roles, families, friends, who we are all passionate about spending our time doing and working with and being with. But I don't want to speak for everyone, all the volunteers, but I'm sure for most of us, we've abandoned all of that so that we could make this project a reality. And I don't think any of us will regret the hours spent away from the other passions to fulfill this one. The volunteers at Women in Mining UK have put their hearts and souls into this. Some of them, they're tears, but happy tears. And I think for that, I am truly grateful. We should all be truly grateful for them and the fact that we have this project. And I will be thanking the volunteers quite a lot, so get used to it. Our friends at the Women in Mining organizations, some of whom are here today, trade associations around the world, our WIM100 sponsors, including BMO. Yes, so BMO Capital Markets, who many of you would have met last night, but also Hydrick and Struggles and BCG, Boston Consulting Group. Thank you and welcome to the madness. The nominators, the people who identified every single one of you, the multiple people who have nominated you multiple times, thank you to them, and of course, to you, right? You accepted, you recognize it, and you're here to celebrate yourselves, each other, and also the work that we are putting into this initiative. So thank you for being here, and thank you for making an impact in the industry. So we selected the WIM100, we selected you because you're either a trailblazer, someone who perseveres amidst adversity, or someone who empowers and advocates for others. But more than likely, you represent all of those characters. And that is really testament to your commitment, your grit, and the fact that you see value in being change makers in this industry. The mining industry is most certainly safer, more sustainable, and more inclusive because of you. We still have a long way to go, but it's better than what it was. So far too often, when I speak of women, well, when I speak of mining, and I say, oh, I'm a woman in mining, the eyebrows raise. Obviously for those out of the industry, but some in the industry. Like, oh, a woman in mining, tell me more. And too often, our stories have not been heard, they've not been told, and we're often perceived as the leaders from behind, the servant leaders, and not the ones at the forefront. This is not this cohort. This is not the 2020 cohort. This is not the WIM100. You are leaders, you are visible, and you are making that impact that needs to be seen. The WIM100 is also meant to be a tool to inspire future generations. I've heard so many stories of communities getting behind WIM100s. Noema is somewhere, I cannot see anyone, but oh, there we go. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of listening to her story and listening about the young girls from her village and from her community finding her on Facebook after she was nominated in 2020 and saying, women in mining, and a Black woman in mining in Brazil, this is amazing, in a leadership position, but they would not have seen her otherwise. So yes, Women in Mining UK, we're helping to give that visibility, but now we're hoping that more and more mining companies do that. We hope that your peers can take this initiative as that jumping point. Now, I've had the privilege of working with the World Economic Forum for the Future of Work Task Force on behalf of Women in Mining UK. And there is both momentum and alignment on gender equity and gender inclusion within the mining sector. But there are systemic barriers that we have not yet been able to shift. And because this is a burning topic, we decided it was important to have a panel discussion on the future of mining and the future of talent in this context here. We have two of the leading companies driving this conversation here as sponsors for the WIM100. So we thought we would really take advantage of that. But more importantly, you're very important, but more importantly, you're here. So we thought we would have this discussion with you here in this context, but then after in a smaller group context, so that we can really unpick what the future is and what are the conversations we should be having and what are the changes we should be driving. So with that, it's truly inspirational. It's truly an honor for Women in Mining UK to be doing this and be hosting you. And we are so proud that we can say that we had all of these women here in London to celebrate with us. So thank you so much. And we're on to our panel. I've never, thank you. Yes. So I don't think anyone has seen me with my phone for the entire week, but the head of comms will kill me if I do not take a selfie. I am not the best person to do this, especially in this room.
Stacey, and we're also going to have a group shot in a minute.
Ariadna has said, I need to take a selfie, and she is the boss with comms. So I'll take 3 selfies, and then we shall start. Okay, now wouldn't it be embarrassing if my storage just said full? It probably will. Okay, we'll do it this way, and I'll get, well, we have a nice little mixture here. Good, we have BCG and hydrogen struggles here. Oh no, see, I'm already, look. That's how you take a selfie. Okay. All right, ooh, let's get some angles going. Hey. Or maybe that way. There we go. Sorry, guys. There you go. Okay. Oh, we're not done yet. This will take a long time. All right. There we go. Oh, I like this. Someone's doing that. I'm going to do that too. That's this group's pose, yeah? Okay. D'accord. The disruptors. I like this. I love that they were like, we're not being left out. We support women in mining. Okay, so let's start our conversation. Let's say it's a conversation. Okay. Lovely. The room gets quiet. Okay, so I want to start right off the bat. We have BCG, and I'm looking towards BCG as for the strategic, corporate, how do we look at systemic change within organizations? So that's how I'm looking at BCG. We have Adrian Schulte-Steinberg. Danke, ich spreche kaum Deutsch. And we have Nicola here from BCG. And I think I will start with you both, but before that, we also have Jorge Oliveira, Gilles, who is responsible for, well, you focus a lot on boards.
That's right.
Yes, so we'll come to you a bit for the board. Looking at the future of boards, especially within the current climate. And then we have Tim Jensen, who came all the way from Canada. Welcome. Thank you. Senior partner. And all focused in mines and metals industry. So maybe we start with the current state of the world. And I will turn to Nicola, who focuses quite a lot on on the current markets, especially in mines and metals. Can you talk us through what are some of the concerns that you're seeing within the context of the current economic crisis and geopolitical tensions that we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, look, there are so many challenging dynamics happening at the moment within the global macro context, but then also some specific mining factors. So we think about the global macroeconomic context. We have the geopolitical tensions happening, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, for example. This is placing a real sort of shock within supply chains, looking at how we can actually get materials around the world where previously trade would flow quite seamlessly. Then thinking about the world that we have right now, the energy crisis. We have really high inflation. For example, in the UK, it's at 10% plus today, and companies are struggling with the cost pressure as a result of that. Then on demand side, there's the uncertainty around, obviously, the macroeconomic context, but particularly within mining, thinking about the future sustainable value of some of the commodities. And there's a lot of uncertainty while there are some short-term headwinds, for example, with coal, but actually the long-term, how do companies think about their portfolio to have sustainable value in the future, thinking about transitioning to more of the materials involved in electrification and renewable energy, for example. So there are lots of these dynamics happening at the moment, and it's a very challenging time, and new challenges that maybe in previous crises, like the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, it requires a completely different level of thinking to how companies would have responded back in those periods of time. And Adrian, I think, can also help add flavor to this.
Well, maybe in adding flavor to that, then I think one thing that I'm sure a lot of people would love to know with all of these challenges, then what are some of the scenarios that you've mentioned? What are some of the challenges for companies what are you seeing as more challenging for companies to adapt to respond to, in terms of whether it's responding to supply chain or stakeholder expectations? Yeah. Adrian or Nicola, I don't know who wants to take that on board.
Happy to, but maybe before I do that, I want to briefly also take the opportunity to say Congratulations to everyone in the room also. When I entered into the building here through the fairly small entrance, it felt like a very energetic and very positive and inspirational moment, right? And if we find a way to keep that energy and that inspiration for the mining industry, and not just keep it, but make it bigger, that would be great. And I think Women in Mining is a great way of doing that. So from my side, first of all, also congratulations to all of you. So back to the question, I think, what are the kind of scenarios or things that mining companies need to react on, or maybe how to? I think the one biggest, I'm going to give a disappointing answer to this, but the one biggest thing that one needs to be aware of is that there's not a precedent really for this kind of situation, right? So we have looked into, we have done quite a few analyses. If you look into unemployment rates, you compare to previous crises, it's basically completely the opposite. If you look into interest rates, it's basically completely the opposite. If you look into oil prices, energy prices, it's the opposite than typical crisis. So basically we are in a situation where we cannot really learn from what we have done before. So I think, while of course one needs to think through what are the implications for supply chain, what are the different kind of scenarios I want to prepare for, I think almost the best thing to do basically is to set up an organization for creativity, for innovation, for creative thoughts, for new ideas essentially, and even such ideas can grow in an environment which is maybe financially more challenging, but it's as important as in a growth environment, right? So I think that would be probably my, hopefully not too unsatisfactory answer to the question.
No, quite satisfactory actually, because it begs me then to ask Heidrich and Struggles how, and in terms of responding to this, how are we seeing mining companies look towards their talent in terms of innovation and new types of innovation, and looking and moving beyond what traditional leadership looks like or traditional roles look like? What are you seeing in terms of these changes and responses to what Adrian here has mentioned? You know, who wants to take it? I'm just throwing it out.
No, sure, I can start. Boards and company leaderships are generally facing this exact issue, and they are rethinking the type of talent they need at the top to be able to deal precisely with a range of challenges that go from geopolitics, which are completely new. Typically, a lot of executives did not, senior executives were a bit aside from politics, whilst today executives are being asked to respond to, you know, we have a couple of mines in Russia. What do we do with that? What are our responsibilities in the current context? We have a mega environmental issue, or we have something that has impacted from a cultural perspective a particular community big time. And unfortunately, in our industry, we face these issues every day, and everyone in this room, I'm sure, has faced them. Leadership needs to be broader. There needs to be a different type of sensitivity, which links very nicely with diversity in that sense, and that's the silver lining to all the challenges we have today, because boards are realizing that the more diverse their leadership, the company leaderships are in terms of gender, but in terms of ethnicity, also in terms of cultural background, the less likely they are to commit big mistakes, because there will be different points of view, different sensitivities in the room, a different way to approach the problems that are emerging. Just to finish, a complexity that is having a direct positive impact in increasing the diversity of leadership, with the caveat that ever more important, the best of the best and a broad view rather than just a narrow view is required from talent. Absolutely,
because, you know, we say the best of the best, but the best of the best have been defined in a very narrow way. And we talk about leadership, and I think there's always been a focus on more women on boards, and we're seeing this increase. But what we're not seeing is the shift at C-suite and general managers on mine sites. I think a lot of people miss that in terms of more women in that operational leadership role. Where is this going, right? Tim,
It's a very interesting question, and I think certainly the general manager role within a mining company at a mine site has been historically a real pipeline of talent for an organization to develop into more senior roles. And we're seeing with our clients a real recognition, not across the board, but a growing recognition that there is a different leadership skill set needed at site level these days than maybe historically was appreciated. And that gets to some of George's points as well around a broader set of stakeholders that need to be engaged with. And I think there's a real recognition. There's two kind of skill sets that we've seen companies want to measure in a more meaningful way and also attract into their organization. And at the top of that list is stakeholder management, even at a general manager level, but across organizations at a more junior level as well as in the C-suite and a more senior level. And it's really a measure of how an individual can be empathetic with the audience, an increasingly complex audience that they're having to engage with, and how well that they can do in communicating with authenticity the story, the purpose behind what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing growing. And the other is agility. And it gets to Adrian's point and I think what BCG is seeing as well in the need for organizations to innovate and to think differently. The mining industry historically has not been particularly innovative. It's made bigger trucks and bigger shovels to do things in a very similar way. And there is a real need, both at site level and at enterprise level, to encourage that innovative, creative thought process. And what we're seeing is organizations looking to measure an individual's agility, and we define that as their ability to be resilient, their ability to adapt to new situations, their ability to continually learn. I think, reading through a lot of the stories of the people in this room, the good news is that a tremendous amount of resilience and agility has been demonstrated, and I think that'll be something that you'll see organizations continually want to focus on and measure going forward.
So if you receive a message from Hydrogen Struggles, it's not spam. They are hiring.
I will have to that. I cannot reveal yet, but just yesterday I placed on a board one of the women alumni of Women in Mining that will be sitting on a London PLC board.
Brilliant.
And it's important to say it's not just general management careers or CEO careers. There's huge interest in women with a strong technical background in mining. We're going to have a guest at our table at lunch who's got a very distinguished career in technical and could not be more in demand to sit on various boards. There's other women, including a couple in this room. I've tried to move to different types of roles, whether it's technical, whether it's environment and ESG, or finance, financial services. There's a role for, I'm perhaps a bit biased to talk more about the senior roles, but also executive board, by the way. So both executive board and non-executive usually demand, and that demand comes across the board. If you develop a fantastic technical career that need to innovate technically, to bring digital, to bring new processes, new technology into mining, it's going to be super important.
I think sorry, Tim.
I was just going to add a brief plug to that. We would love to help each of you individually. If you want to reach out to George or I and talk about career development or where your career is going, please feel free to do so. We'd really love to be involved.
And, good. That's why we've chosen the sponsors that we've chosen, the value that they can give to you as well. But yeah, I imagine that there are quite a number of women in this room who will be getting a call shortly, I'm sure. I think, because we're on the topic of boards, we often think that the journey to board positions need to be something that's quite traditional, something that is quite formal. But are you challenging yourselves to look towards other types of women coming up through the pipeline? I can give an example of a woman in the room here. We have Miriam Kamau, who owns a mine site, has a team of very fantastic men and women working for her. And through her journey as from artisanal miner to a mine site owner, she's now sitting on boards, she's now making an impact. And this is not a conventional story. So I'm wondering if we, from a hiring point of view, if we are challenging ourselves that way, but then also when we're looking at organizational changes, are we also challenging ourselves this way? So maybe I'll leave Hydrogen Struggles to ponder that, and then what about BCG? How are we? We're talking about innovation, but innovation in looking at people.
Look, I think the one thought that comes to my mind is that it's, when one talks about the organizational, let's say, systems or things that one needs to create for people to maybe have a bit of more unconventional careers, right? One very quickly links into the topic of future of work, flexible sort of ways of working and being able to make a way through the organization in many ways. BCG runs a survey every few years, like a global big survey, which basically looks into sort of what we call deskless workers, right? And the reason we are doing that basically is a lot of the discussion that we have on that society has on work is typically focused around combining sort of being at home with work and making those things work, sort of how to work better with technology, but not by also being at home and so on. And most of those suggestions or ideas, they fit to people who have a desk. Yeah. But we forget typically that 75% of the workforce, on average, across countries, does not have a desk. And they cannot as easy sort of work from home, partially, for example, right? And I think that's especially true for the mining industry. And I think it's a barrier also to, or like if we are talking about traditional career paths, it's also a barrier often to maybe novel career paths to make that work. And if one thinks about solutions to that, to give maybe one quick side story, as part of that survey, we were talking, for example, to a nurse who was starting a shift early in the morning, working for 2 hours, sneaking home to make her kids ready for school, bringing them to school, sneaking back to work to basically be able to continue to work on the job, right? And I think the solution, this specific case, eventually went towards to simply change shift schedules to like starting 2 hours later, right? Which sometimes can make big changes. Or we have lots of companies that discuss, for example, can we maybe just sort of split roles in 2 roles and sort of let people work only half the time so they can be more with their families and so on, because the needs of a desk-less workforce are actually very similar to the needs of a workforce that has a desk, right? So I think one of the ideas or things I would want to leave the panel or the crowd also with is what are the opportunities to create more flexibility in career paths also on the, let's say, more traditional or maybe desk-less workers, right? Maybe as one perspective.
No, I think it's a great perspective. Something that I do with a lot of my clients is a day in the life of. Mm-hmm. And I think because our realities are different and we don't understand necessarily all the complexities within the context of the other person, that we don't then consider how a desk-less solution might actually be the way forward for productivity, for the company, but also for better workforce mental health and well-being. So it's, for me, it makes the most sense, actually. And I like this deskless, let's call it the deskless approach, mindset approach. Think about how we shift things within this context that you've created here.
And how to create basically pathways for people who, by the nature of their jobs, cannot have a desk, but need to work without a desk because they need to be physically where they have to work, right? And how to create creative pathways for those people also to have a career towards maybe a general manager position or similar. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then hydrogen struggles. I've given you some time.
Very well for us, yeah. I think one of the things we're seeing around that, and we're seeing that request from our clients consistently, is a real need to be able to measure performance in a different way to the way that we've historically measured performance. And this is something that I think is in its infancy in a lot of ways, and companies are still wrestling with. But historically, a lot of people were promoted by showing up to the site or showing up to their desk or in a very traditional way. And it's very difficult to work in a virtual environment. A lot of companies are struggling to work in a virtual environment because they haven't built the performance management measurement systems and processes to really understand who's delivering value. And that is something that I think you'll see companies invest in considerably, continue to invest in considerably as they look to measure kind of where the work is getting done. And I think that'll be a really good thing because it democratizes to some extent, hopefully if it's done well, who ends up in those promotion conversations. And hopefully there's a real lens towards thinking differently, and I think that's where innovation is going to come from. If we continue to do the same things the same way, then we won't get that creativity and innovation.
And Nicola, what are your clients asking you to not only advise them on, but in terms of the innovation? I know you do a lot of work with AI technology and bridging that gap between innovation. What are some of the things coming out of BCG?
Well, I think I'm just reflecting on this conversation a bit and thinking about talent and how do we retain talent. And actually, I mentioned about the challenges within mining. Actually, mining is a really cool place to be right now. There are so many challenges within the mining industry that affect the world, like how many value chains come out of mining, right? And how do we provide the materials of the future to help the world decarbonize? How do we decarbonize mining operations? These are huge challenges that require innovation. How do we leverage digital and automation to solve some of the productivity issues that we have within mining? So it requires so much, and we mentioned about new thinking, so many different things to bring into mining to help mining modernize, but also really help them to solve the big challenges that the world is facing today. And I just think it's a great place to be. So, and great to be sharing it with all of you today as well.
I think that's a brilliant place to end this conversation. Actually, not end it, we pause it, and then continue it when we go into the breakout rooms.